was committed. So,
Good evening and welcome to the June 2nd, 2014 meeting of the Lake Forest City Council. Could I ask the clerk to call the roll, please?
Certainly. Honorable Mayor Schoenheider?
Here.
Alderman Waldeck?
Here.
Alderman Beidler?
Here.
Alderman Moore?
here.
Alderman Pandeleon?
Here.
Alderman Tack?
Here.
Alderman Reisenberg?
Here.
Alderman Edelman?
Here.
Alderman Moreno?
Here.
Mr. Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Biddy, very much. Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So tonight's our first night starting a little bit early, so hopefully that's going to work out, and I think everyone's happy that we're doing so. First item on the agenda, comments by mayor. I have a list of new board and commission appointments that I'd like to read off, and as I do so, then I'll ask at the end the council to give me a voice vote to approve those. New appointee to the Building Review Board, Bruce Grieve. On the Gorton Commission, Peter Cherry and Al Lerner. Senior Resource Commission, Sally Kelly, Blanche Hall, and James Blanda. The Audit Committee, Lucinda Beyer, and she'll be chairman, replacing Michelle. I also want to mention and announce the City Council Standing Committees for the 2014-15 year. Finance Committee will be again chaired by Alderman Pandeleon. All members of the council are included in the Finance Committee. The PCA, or the Personnel Compensation Administration Committee, will be chaired by the mayor, and Alderman Reisenberg and Alderman Moore have agreed to serve on that. The Public Works Committee, Alderman Waldeck has agreed to step in and serve as chairman on that, and she'll be joined by Alderman Tack and Alderman Moreno. And the Property and Public Lands Committee, who is very busy right now, Alderman Reisenberg has agreed to remain as chairman, and joined by Alderman Edelman and Alderman Pandeleon. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, very much for continuing to serve in those roles. We mentioned, I think, at the last meeting that we were going to reinstitute the Lawrence R. Temple Distinguished Public Service Award. There's so many wonderful people in this community who give so deeply and greatly of themselves and their time and their talents, and I believe it was only appropriate to begin to step out and, again, recognize them. We've developed a public service award committee for the Temple Award, and I'm going to mention the three individuals who have agreed to serve on that. Jack Preschlack, former Mayor Preschlack, has agreed to serve for a 2-year term. Former President of the caucus, Scott Helton, has also agreed to a 2-year term, and Gail Hodges has agreed to a 1-year term. So I'd like a motion, if I would, from the council to approve all of those appointments.
So moved.
So second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, unanimously approved. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is a proclamation for Wenban Funeral Home's 125th anniversary. And if you may, I'll read that. Whereas in 1889, Lake Forest resident Curtis Gideon Wenban developed the funeral home and ambulance service at 233 East Deer Path in a building that was created from cement and sand that he hauled up from Lake Forest Beach. And whereas shortly after his opening his business, Curtis was joined by his sons, Frederick Porter Wenban and George Irving Wenban. And whereas the funeral home operated successfully by the Wenban family until it was sold in 1976 to James Icabino and Thaddeus Larkowski, both employees of the home at the time, who in 1986 moved the Wenban Funeral Home into its new building at the corner of Vine and Western Avenues. Whereas for over 1 century, the Wenban Funeral Home has been serving the families of Lake Forest, Lake Bluff, and surrounding communities with the sole intent of helping them find peace in an honest and dignified manner after the loss of their loved one. Therefore, I, Donald P. Schoenheider, Mayor of the City of Lake Forest, proclaim the city's best wishes on the Wenban Funeral Home's 125th anniversary and call its significance to the citizens of the City of Lake Forest. Be it further resolved that this resolution be spread upon the minutes of the City Council and a copy hereof, duly signed by the Mayor, be presented to the City of Lake Forest this second day of June, 2014. May I ask a motion to approve the proclamation?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, and I'd like to present this if I could.
And I'd like to understand that I only been there for yourself.
Jim, did you want to make some comments? You have to speak in the microphone behind you, though. What do you do?
I know it's slide. I just wanted to say that I began with the firm in 1970, having left a very small community that my family had a great deal to do with the establishment of, and I had never heard of Lake Forest. I was from the south side of Chicago, and we came up here and we thought we were in Wisconsin. We'd never been this far past the loop in our lives. But the nice thing about it, we got to know and love the people, and the people of Lake Forest were so embracing. It made us feel at home right away. Now, unfortunately, most of them are down at St. Mary's or Lake Forest Cemetery. And I was looking at the mayors that I knew, and I'm not going to tell you which ones. But it's been a lovely community to work in, and I appreciate the proclamation, because in today's business world, I think it's quite an accomplishment, especially in a small town, and I thank you all very much for the recognition. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda, Legal Services Engagement Agreement. I think in your packet there was the agreement to engage the Filippini law firm as our city attorney, and Vic Filippini continuing on as our city attorney. Unless there's questions or comments on that, I'd like to get a motion to approve that.
I'll make a motion to approve the legal service engagement agreement.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Vic, you made it through. Congratulations. And that ends my comments this evening. Next item on the agenda, comments by City Manager Bob Kiley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This evening, we have special guests with us this evening for our community spotlight. Certainly, she is no stranger to this council or this community. That's Janice Hawk, who is the executive director of the Historical Society and is going to give us some highlights of the things that the Historical Society are working on for 2014. Janice?
Hi, thank you, Bob. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council, for the opportunity to talk with you tonight. I'm delighted to share what's happening at the Lake Forest Lake Bluff Historical Society. Before I talk about our programs, I just wanted to mention briefly some of the services that we've provided directly to the City of Lake Forest over the last 6 months. We've provided lots of research. I have some examples here. We helped the police department research information for former police chief Charles Gilbert for his memorial. We worked with the building department, who was looking for information about Ridge Farm and Grove School for an architectural consultant. We helped Everett School celebrate their centennial. We worked with them to research the history of the school, and we also worked with students on specific projects for their celebration in May. And we had someone come by from the city manager's office to look up information on former city managers in celebration of the 75th anniversary of that form of government. We've also provided lots of photographs to the city, specifically for the new website, all the historical photos that are on the website. And then the city forester came by looking for photos of historic trees for a publication. So those are some things we've done directly for the city, and we've also done some sort of related things in terms of economic development. We've shared old exhibit panels for merchants to display in their storefront windows, and the panels that are currently on display on Western Avenue have been very popular, and they've driven people into the Lake Forest bookstore. So I just wanted to share that with you, a few things that we work on in collaboration with the city. And now I'd like to tell you about some of our upcoming programs. Our latest exhibit is on the history of Westlake Forest, and it opened in April with a members event with over 100 guests. And this is the first comprehensive history of this part of Lake Forest. It tells about the early days of the area when it was called Lancaster and Everett. We describe the development and annexation of many areas, including Conway Farms and the Lasker Estate. The exhibit profiles 10 people who shaped this area, including your predecessor, Elliott Donnelly. We also have a very fascinating video montage of aerial photos that shows the development of 10 different areas in town over an 80-year period. And it's just amazing to see these photos scroll through. As part of the exhibit, we surveyed 100 people on what they thought the boundaries of Westlake Forest were. But you'll have to come to the exhibit to find out the answer. Many local residents, businesses, and organizations loaned artifacts that we have on display at the museum. And for this exhibit, we felt that it was appropriate that it actually take place in Westlake Forest. So copies of the panels are currently on display at the Telegraph Road train station, Lake Forest Hospital, and Everett School. And they will be traveling throughout the community over the course of the exhibit. And our curator is going to be giving a free lecture on July 17th about some stories that didn't make it into the exhibit. And we will also have a book signing for the Arcadia book, Westlake Forest. And that's coming up in July. We recently published the second edition of our mock newspaper. It was renamed The Gem this year, and hopefully all of you received this at home. It was mailed to every household and business in the community, and I have a copy here, and there are some on the back table. And last year was the first time I did this, and it won an award of superior achievement from the Illinois Association of Museums and was called a model for the profession. Now, this newspaper profiles a specific year in local history. Last year we did 1916, and this year's issue details 1926. So we actually went back and read the Lake Forester, the city council minutes, and other sources like that on what was happening in the community. And 1926 was a very pivotal year for the community. It's the year that Westlake Forest was annexed, Howard Van Doren Shaw passed away, Lake Forest College was celebrating its 50th anniversary, and the Skokie Valley route of the North Shore Interurban opened. So if you haven't read The Gem yet, I would encourage you to read it. And the Gem was supported by businesses that have been around since 1926, including the Wenban Funeral Home. Thank you. And we have the great pleasure of working with the Wenban Funeral Home to celebrate their 125th anniversary with some public programs. One program is coming up on June 12th, and we're going to have a demonstration of Civil War embalming techniques. And I'm sure all of you have been wondering when the program on Civil War embalming techniques was going to happen. But it's really going to be fascinating. I guess before the Civil War, bodies were just buried where they fell. But during the Civil War, all the mothers wanted their sons brought home to be buried close to home. And so doctors really had to figure out what to do. And so this speaker that's coming is a reenactor, and he's going to talk about how this changed burial practices. He's going to talk about Victorian mourning customs and also President Lincoln's funeral that was taking place. And so we've called the program A Mother's Wish, Bring Our Fallen Home. And this program's at Lake Forest High School, and it's free. So it's supported by a grant from the Illinois Humanities Council. So I think it's going to be a fascinating demonstration and discussion, and I hope you all can come. And this fall, we'll also be offering a cemetery tour and a reception in a Victorian home to continue the celebration of the 125th anniversary of Wenban Funeral Home. We also have another lecture coming up, Lake Forest during the Great Gatsby era. And it's kind of in keeping with our mock newspaper of the year 1926. We decided to go back and put this lecture together about the 1920s. And the lecture is going to, among many things, include the community's connection to the novel The Great Gatsby, the original flapper, Irene Castle, shown on the slide here, and also famous jazz musician Bix Beiderbecke. And it's going to take place at the Knollwood Club on June 17th. And Bob, you'll be happy to know it's also going to touch upon golf a little bit, so you'll want to come to that one. Now, information on all of our events is available on our website. Our events this year have been selling out before we've even had the chance to do general publicity. So, please make your reservations early. And if you want to get first notice of our programs, I encourage you all to become a member of the Historical Society, and you'll get first notice and discounts of the different events and programs we offer. So thank you.
Thank you, Janice, very much. You got a busy year ahead of you.
We have a lot of fun. I mean, it's a great community to celebrate the history, and we're just, selling out left and right with our programs. So clearly there's a need out there and a want for what we're doing.
Thank you.
Thanks, Janice. I really enjoyed your golf and Lake Forest series last year as well. To kind of piggyback with the BMW.
Very good. Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, and don't get rid of it. We may need it next year, too.
Save it.
I hope you will. So,
Thank you. My final comment is that on tonight's agenda, there's a few items or expenditures that are on the agenda, and I think the council knows that we take very seriously our responsibility to expend public funds in the most prudent and judicious way possible. And I just want to put a finer point maybe on a couple of them, because it would appear as though we didn't go out for bid, or we just decided to go spend the money however we wish. But really, there is certain madness, or method to our madness, I should say. There is a madness there, too, when the staff's involved. But for example, we try and look at how can we get the best bang for our buck for the residents' funds. And a good example is the road program that was on there. This was bid out by the city, and the city council awarded the bid to Peter Baker. As you know, they've been working very quickly around town, making some major patches, and we put some money in our budget for pothole repair. And quite frankly, as we got into this, we recognized that Baker had the equipment and the wherewithal to do these a lot faster and a lot more efficiently than we can. And that was one of the reasons that when they came back and they were willing to give us the same unit pricing that they did for the regular program that we had bid out, that we said that this was a good deal, and that's why that's recommended there. The live scan, unfortunately, we do occasionally get sole source items. This is required, or this piece of equipment is required by the state of Illinois, so the state police really are the ones that say this is what you're going to go, and it's not really very much of a product that you can just go out and bid to anybody that's out there in that situation. And then the exercise equipment that's there, I think it's a little unique. While we did actually bid it out, we first had a survey of the people who use the rec center to say what kind of treadmills do you like, what kind of equipment do you like, and so they, through the survey, helped us narrow this down. And once we then had the specifications, we then went out for bid, we posted it in the newspaper, we did mail it out to people who have bid in the past and so forth. Unfortunately, we only had a couple of bidders in this case, but we were able to pick and choose the lowest bids for the kind of equipment that we had. So I just wanted to make sure that it looks maybe unusual, particularly with 3 or 4 of them on the agenda at the same time, but we try and look at each situation individually and carefully, and most importantly, I think, is to, whenever possible, adhere to the city's purchasing policies and procedures so that we do everything above board, and we also are able to stretch what dollars that we do have as far as we possibly can. So I know there is staff here as we get to them on the omnibus agenda. If you have any more specific questions about any of those items, we can address those one at a time. But I did want to make sure that I address that, because I don't want anyone who's looking at the agenda to just think that we're sort of circumventing our own purchasing policies and procedures. And that concludes my report.
Great. Thank you, Bob, very much. Next item on the agenda this evening, comments by council members. We mentioned a moment ago that we're restarting the Lawrence R. Temple Public Service Award, and unfortunately, a couple of weeks ago, we lost a true public servant in our community, and I'd like to read a resolution of sympathy. Whereas on behalf of the City of Lake Forest, the City Council expresses its sadness at the profound loss of Leslie T. Chapman on May 16, 2014. And whereas Leslie Chapman, since 2011, was a valued member of the Housing Trust Fund Board of the City of Lake Forest, serving as a champion for affordable and moderately priced housing, with the goal that those who work in the community might also be able to live in the community. And whereas Leslie Chapman was also a member of the Forest Green Transit Committee, and whereas Leslie Chapman had an active and long career at Lake Forest College, serving in several positions before being appointed to Vice President for Business Affairs and Treasurer. And whereas several honors were established in her honor, including Lake Forest College's Leslie T. Chapman Award for Administrative Excellence and Service, and the Lake Forest Lake Bluff Historical Society's Leslie T. Chapman Summer Internship. And whereas Leslie Chapman was an important liaison between Lake Forest College and the City of Lake Forest, communicating, coordinating, and always working to build a stronger relationship. And whereas Leslie Chapman was an engaged and generous member of the Lake Forest community. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the City Council that its deepest sympathy goes out to her husband, Richard, and her family. Be it further resolved that this resolution be spread upon the minutes of the City Council, and a copy hereof, duly signed by the mayor, be presented to the family of Leslie Chapman. Do I have a motion to approve the resolution, please?
So moved.
Do I have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
And passes unanimously. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, Housing Trust Fund Board update. Alderman Moore.
Some of you may know I serve on the Housing Trust, the Housing Trust Board, and Alderman Morsch was, I'm sorry, no, he's not Alderman anymore.
He thinks he is.
Chairman, yes, exactly, yeah. Chairman of the Housing Trust, Tom Morsch, former Alderman, is not able to make it. In fact, I had a little thing that I was ready to talk about tonight, but Kathy put such a absolutely perfectly written and concise, I'm just going to read her talking points, if that's okay. It's quite nice. For the past 2 years, the city has partnered with the Community Partners for Affordable Housing, and Rob Anthony's right here, a local not-for-profit to purchase and rehabilitate existing houses in Lake Forest. The approach of acquiring existing homes in the community was first suggested by residents and previous members of the City Council during discussions about housing several years ago. Actually, Stu Widman was one of the driving forces there. Through this program, the neighborhoods which have historically provided some of the community's most affordable housing are preserved, and at the same time, houses that have suffered from a lack of maintenance are improved. Through the combination of funding from the city's Housing Trust Fund and tax credits obtained by CPAH, that's Community Partners for Affordable Housing, 4 houses have been acquired to date, improved and sold to income-qualified families. Community volunteer days have helped to improve the houses and clean up the yards involving Croya, local businesses, and residents. At some of the houses, the new owners opened their doors and invited neighbors in the community to see the finished product. The community's response to the program has been overwhelmingly positive. Each of the 4 homes acquired to date were sold to income-qualified families, all with local ties to the community. In fact, one of them was good friends of my son. The land remains in ownership of the CPAH, and the homes are sold to the owner, and that way they remain affordable. Rob Anthony, the Executive Director of CPAH, is here tonight, sitting next to Kathy. And in a moment, I'm going to invite him up to make a few comments about the success of the program in the community to date and the programs in general. I do have a recommendation from the City's Housing Trust Board to present to us tonight for City Council action, and that action can be acted on later. The board recently voted unanimously to recommend to the City Council that the partnership with CPAH continue, and to allow that to happen, the existing agreement between the city and CPAH be updated and extended. The board recommends that an agreement authorize expenditures of up to $250,000 to support the acquisition and improvement of 3 additional homes. The city's Housing Trust Fund has a current balance of $760,000, and the use of the fund is restricted to the expenditures related to supporting affordable and moderately priced housing in the community. The city's Housing Trust Fund is is funded by a portion of the city's demolition fee and by payments made in lieu of included affordable and moderate priced units in the development, if we have a multi-unit development. The largest contribution to this fund came from the Presbyterian Home several years ago. On behalf of the Housing Trust Board, I would ask council support the extension of the agreement and the continuation of the program. And Rob Anthony is available if there's any questions. Anybody have anything? Do you have anything you'd like to add?
Rob, do you want to come up and make a remark or two?
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. I really want to thank the community for all the support that we've had over the last few years. And it's been really exciting that we've been able to both help the Senior Cottage project, which we were able to help restructure and stabilize that so that can be maintained as affordable housing for seniors in the community over the long term. And then with some of the scattered site single-family homes, we're also have been able to serve exactly the profile of what the City Council and residents asked us to serve. The first home that we did was occupied by a single mom who, after going through a divorce, couldn't afford to stay in the community, and the ability to stay in the community through this home and keep her children in the same school system was just invaluable to her. The second home was occupied by a young family who grew up in Highland Park, in Lake Forest, and they could not afford to come back to the community as young adults. Their family was here, their church was here, they wanted to be closer to that support structure, and they just couldn't afford to do it. And so this home made that possible to them. The third home, a moment ago, you recognized Leslie Chapman, who was such an advocate for affordable housing, and her vision was really to be able to provide housing for people who work in the community too. The third house was occupied by the softball coach at Lake Forest College, and we had an open house last fall when they moved in. I know several of you came and you could see the finished house, and she was just so thrilled to see Lake Forest College employee moving into that house. And so we're just so glad that was able to happen. We've also had a lot of volunteer days, so we engaged the community. We've had volunteer days from the college, from Lake Forest Bank and Trust, from Croya, from At Properties, a lot of other groups in Lake Forest who come in and, we're cleaning up problem properties and improving the housing stock and making them available to people who live and work here in the community. So thank you so much.
Any questions for Rob?
David, maybe this is a question for you. You mentioned the money specific for 3 houses, but the resolution that I saw printed was more general. It was for the amount of money. Is it for 3 houses, or is it, could it be for 4?
It might be for 4, it might be for 2.
Okay, so.
The amount
it's
is
the
kind of an
amount that's
average representing the opportunity. The thing is, when we go to buy a house, you can't be very public about it. It's good to be able to move. It's good to be able to take care of business. So all the money is still looked after and checked upon, but this enables the next project or 2 or 3, hopefully, to occur. That's an average.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's the amount of money that we're focusing on, not the number of houses.
Correct. It might be 2, and then we might wait 3 years.
Yeah.
We might be back in a year and ask for more money if more opportunities come up.
What's the term of the agreement?
I'm sorry?
I didn't see it in here. What's the term of the agreement?
The length? 2 years.
2 years? Mm-hmm. And it says we updated it. I mean, were there any changes incorporated in the plan?
There were some monetary changes, and I believe that was all, correct?
Yeah.
Rob, I will tell you, I've been through a couple of the homes. They're just terrific. I went through the coach's home with his family and 4 kids, maybe.
Yeah, right.
It was spectacular.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you on behalf of the city for your organization, everything you've done, for both the scattered site program and you mentioned the senior cottages. That was a major endeavor that you were willing to take on and get us home on that. And we're very grateful, and you've done a wonderful job. You and your organization have been a great partner.
Thank
and
you.
we
Thank
appreciate
you
it.
very much.
There is consideration, as David mentioned, of extending the agreement with community partners. Anyone have any other questions or comments about that?
Just one more. Is the intent that a house be used by a family, not subdivided and offered to more than one unit, family unit? Is that the case?
Correct. We've not typically done any kinds of zoning changes or anything like that to increase the density. Right.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other comments by council? If not, I'll ask for anyone in the audience that would care to comment on this. Seeing none, I would ask for a motion to direct the city manager to update and extend the agreement with community partners for affordable housing, to authorize the purchase and improvement of existing single-family homes in Lake Forest as they become available, and an amount not to exceed $250,000 in fiscal year 2015. Do I have a motion to that effect?
Moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please, Biddy.
Alderman Waldeck.
Aye.
Alderman Beidler.
Aye.
Alderman Moore.
Aye.
Alderman Pandeleon.
Aye.
Alderman Tack.
Aye.
Alderman Reisenberg.
Aye.
Alderman Edelman.
Aye.
Alderman Moreno.
Aye.
8 yeas, 0 nay. Motion carries.
Thank you very much, Biddy, and thanks again, Rob. Next item on the agenda, opportunity for the citizens to address the city council on non-agenda items.
Don,
Yes.
before you move on, can I
I'm
make
sorry,
a
Mike.
couple timely comments?
Yep.
The first is relevant to Bob Kiley's earlier comments, and that is, May 5th, there was a city council meeting here that I couldn't attend. One of the agenda items had to do with appropriating some money for South Telegraph Road. 2 weeks ago, Peter Baker and Sons removed the top 4 inches of surface of that road. And Friday and Saturday, they repaired the base course and they got the first lift down. So I'd like to thank council for approving that on May 5th. There are a lot of happy people in the 4th Ward and outside the 4th Ward who use those 2 stretches of Telegraph Road. Our staff, I thank Michael Thomas too, because he did a tremendous job in getting this all done in less than 30 days. And whenever they get to the final lift, that'll be great. My second comment, it pertains to parking. When you come into Lake Forest and you park along Western, we have diagonal parking. You go out to the McDonald's on the west side of town, there's diagonal parking. In contrast, if you pull into Egg Harbor, it's perpendicular. If you pull into the Starbucks on the west side of town, it's perpendicular parking, even our own city lots. And it just is increasingly underscored to me that the perpendicular parking, unless you're going to do it like Costco and put an 18-inch double line in between the perpendicular cars, with today's crossovers and SUVs, the parking's an abomination with the perpendicular parking. And so you're asking yourselves, why is Mike talking about diagonal versus perpendicular parking? Well, Planning Commission's working on the Whole Foods. And whether it's a Whole Foods or something else ultimately that gets developed out there, my vote is that community development tries to see it through with diagonal parking instead of perpendicular parking, unless we're going to lower the density of the parking and put in those double lines. So I thought I'd mention it because it is a current item on Planning Commission's agenda.
Thank you. Any other comments by the council this evening?
That our schedule's on page 41, not page 44.
Okay, thank you for that. Anything else? If not, I will get an opportunity for the citizens to address the council on non-agenda items. And seeing no one, we'll move to the next item on the agenda. Omnibus vote consideration items. There are 10 of them, and I'll read them. And as Bob mentioned, and I mention every time, if any alderman would care to take any of these separately, we will do so, or review or discuss them. Item number 1, approval of the May 19, 2014 City Council meeting minutes. Item number 2, approval of the check register for period April 26th to May 23rd, 2014. Item number 3, approval of the amended meeting schedule for the City Council and Finance Committee. Item number 4, consideration and approval of the prevailing wages resolution. Number 5, request to increase the Lake Forest share of the 2014 Joint Annual Pavement Patching Contractual Program. Item number 6, award contract for the fitness center weight equipment purchase as included in the FY15 capital plan. Number 7, consideration of an ordinance approving a recommendation from the Zoning Board of Appeals, first reading and if desired by the City Council, final approval. Item number 8, consideration of ordinances approving recommendations from the Building Review Board, again, first reading if desired by the City Council, final approval. Item number 9, consideration of an ordinance approving a recommendation from the Historic Preservation Commission, first reading and if desired by the council, final approval. And item number 10, request for the City Council to waive the bidding process to purchase a replacement for the TouchPrint TM 5900 Live Scan Booking Station, an electronic fingerprinting device certified to connect with the Illinois State Police and National Crime Information Center databases. Having read all those, any of those items that any member of the council would like to take separately?
Can I ask a
Mr.
couple
Rick?
of questions? Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I would note that there is a scrivener's error in the minutes that are before you for the second, or for the meeting that's in the packet, so subject to that correction.
Got it. Alderman Moore?
Just a couple of questions. Do we have any choice, I guess, for Bob in not approving the prevailing wage package? I mean, is there any reason why we do this? I mean, is it?
We are required by the
Contract
prevailing
of
wage act
adhesion
to
or
do so.
something?
And there are technically penalties that could face the city if we fail to do so. Practically, those penalties aren't going to be meaningless so long as we still abide by the prevailing wage act. But one of the things that we're required to do is to approve it so that the notice of the prevailing wages would be officially sanctioned by the city. So this is one of those unfunded mandates that we need to do.
And
I would like to say one question. Thank you for asking that question.
well, it's a horrible process, but
No fooling.
yeah.
Thankfully, it's likely to get worse.
Yeah. And my other question is just based on the fact that I've been busy and I didn't get a chance to read all the documents, but on for the historic preservation and the BRB, were any of those votes that we might waive first reading on mixed, or were they unanimous? And I apologize for putting you on the spot. Well,
The HPC vote was 5-1.
okay, the other one was unanimous?
It was.
Okay. I usually check that, but I didn't have time, sorry.
I have a question about the fitness equipment. And I just noticed as I was reading the package that there's a reference here. In the beginning of the paragraph, it says that the equipment has reached the end of its useful life. And then later on, it says that there's trade-in value. And if there's trade-in value, it strikes me that somebody's going to recondition that stuff and sell it. And it occurred to me that perhaps we could have had the equipment reconditioned rather than replaced, or purchased reconditioned equipment as opposed to purchasing new equipment. So I'd like to hear the rationale behind those decisions.
I guess it's starting to reach its less.
Jason, why don't you identify yourself so everybody at home knows who you are?
Thanks, Bob. Sorry. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, my name is Jason Bustecker. I'm the fitness center manager for the rec department. So it's reaching its end of its useful life. The current line of equipment that we have currently is no longer manufactured, so which does make parts and repairs potentially costly and extensive. There is a small market for some vendors to take back current equipment, do refurbish it, and then they continue to sell it off to smaller, maybe schools, maybe smaller apartment complexes, people that are looking for less expensive equipment. So I don't know that we have, to be honest, we considered keeping the equipment ourselves and trying to resell it. I think one difficulty with doing that internally would be storage of the equipment in the interim of getting the new equipment in and trying to sell the current equipment out, and where to place that equipment would be challenging.
That wasn't really one of the things I was thinking of. What I was thinking of was either having the equipment reconditioned or purchasing reconditioned equipment that was equivalent, so just to reduce the cost.
Okay.
And if the equipment's no longer manufactured, that satisfies me that, that's going to lead to problems over time. So if you're going to a lower usage area like an apartment complex where it doesn't get the kind of beating that it's going to take at the rec center, probably works fine. But in our situation, I would imagine it's likely to lead to problems and unsatisfied customers and so forth. So
Correct.
thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question, as long as everybody's asking questions. The check register. Why do we include it on our agenda? And what is it supposed to tell me?
Should I try that one?
Well, you're probably the only one. Elizabeth, Bob.
I think Vic may be able to talk about it.
Let me
from a
offer an
statutory-
introduction, and then Alderman Pantaleone might want to talk further about it. The city council needs to approve it because that is something that, under statute, has to be a council approval. It can't be something that's simply done at the staff level. That's the reason. The city council did, I want to say about 4 years ago, establish a protocol as to how to go about it. The protocol essentially presents to the entirety of the city council the summary of the check register. The finance committee chair is charged with getting a report from the finance director and reviewing those. If there are issues that the finance committee chair believes are appropriate to bring to the council, that's the prerogative of the chair to do that. But otherwise, the council has essentially vested the discretion in the chair to review, and if nothing seemed to be out of the ordinary, to make that recommendation. Alderman Pantaleone, did you want to comment
One of the
further?
delights of my job as finance chair is once a month I get an email from Elizabeth Holub with an Excel spreadsheet attached, which has every single check that's written by the city for that month on it. It's thousands of checks long, and I have to go through it and identify any oddities. And I would say once every 6 months, you see something that you don't understand, or it's like, why are we writing a check to this person or that entity, and what was that for? And sometimes they're big checks, sometimes they're small checks. Sometimes there are 17 checks to the same individual, which, I typically will ask about. But it's a pretty straightforward process, and it's not something that we need to include, I would say, in our packet for all of us to go through.
Yeah, because it doesn't tell me anything. I mean,
No,
it
the summary-
doesn't
the
compare
summary
to
doesn't
what we
really
did
help
last year at this, last month, or doesn't compare to last year. They're just like numbers.
Well, that's what check registers are like,
I guess.
It's
Well, I'm glad you're doing that, George.
statutory.
Yeah, the legal requirement is why it's on.
Why would I do that?
The legal requirement is why it's on the agenda. If the council ever wants to revisit the approach that's taken, it can do so. But I think, as Alderman Pantaleone suggested, he's falling on the sword for the rest of you.
Sounds good.
I didn't mean to be,
Okay.
sound
Enough.
like I was complaining, but it's
Enough.
not the most fun job in the world.
It does raise the question if that exceptions management could be automated in a way to flag for you, as the chair of the committee, anything. I mean, it sounds like you're going through this.
The
line
way I
item
do
by
it is I
line.
get the spreadsheet. It's an Excel spreadsheet, so I sort it 2 or 3 different ways. And usually any oddities pop out pretty quickly when you do that. Sorted by numbers, sorted by recipient, sorted by amount, sorted by date, and you start to see things pretty quickly. And there's rarely anything. Actually, there's never been anything that I felt was necessary to bring to the council's attention. Occasionally, I'll have a question for Elizabeth when I see something that I can't figure out what it was for. Sometimes there's a vendor whose name isn't consistent with what we might have heard, on a significant contract where the payment goes to an entity that they control that's different than the one those are the kinds of things that come up. So,
Thank you.
Anything else? Any other questions on the omnibus?
Just one more comment on the 4 items that didn't have any bidding on them for this. I would just like to say that we should be careful as a community not to set our specifications on what we buy so tight so that there's only one bidder. This is what I try to do in my food business, is try to be the only person with that product so I can control the margin to my customers. But the fact is that I know the last treadmill that we bought was the only one that would go to 30 degrees, and that was important, but maybe, to take that one as an example that was several months ago, maybe the community would have to live with the disappointment of 28 degrees, and then we would have a couple different machines to bid on. So I think at any level, and sorry to pick on the treadmill, but, because I know you already had to come up here, but I think it's risky, whether we're buying a fingerprint machine or getting asphalt or whatever, that if we set the specs so narrow that the only person that owns that spec is Peter Baker, then we have to pay him what he wants, or the treadmill with 30 degrees, or the fingerprint machine that the state police say we have to buy. And it's just another way to lose control over the bidding process and proper procedures. Unavoidable this time, and thanks for the explanation, but it's a dangerous path to go down.
Or the filters for the water plant.
Or the filters for the water plant, exactly, yeah.
Anyone else? All right, hearing no one, I'll ask for a motion to approve the omnibus. With the amended minutes.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please, Biddy.
Alderman Waldeck.
Aye.
Alderman Beidler.
Aye.
Alderman Moore.
Aye.
Alderman Pandeleon.
Aye.
Alderman Tack.
Aye.
Alderman Reisenberg.
Aye.
Alderman Edelman.
Aye.
Alderman Moreno.
Aye.
8 yea, 0 nay, motion carries.
Thank you very much, Biddy. Next on the agenda is ordinances this evening. There are none. We will move to new business, and I am opening a public hearing regarding the Market Square 2000 Endowment Fund, and I'd like to turn it over now to Chuck Myers.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I am here seeking approval of expenditures from the Market Square Endowment. And as you know, the past year, winter was particularly hard on plants throughout the Midwest. Market Square was no exception. Brought just a few slides. You can see these are the boxwoods that dominate the landscape, all the ones that are brown there. We've been watching for the last couple months, and unfortunately they didn't make it. Also, the turf was pretty heavily damaged. Again, you can see all of the boxwoods a little closer, easier to see. These are dead. They have actually been removed in the last week. So these are the boxwoods along the outside next to the stores. These were heavily damaged as well, and they've all been removed. So the endowment was set up for back in 2002 for maintenance and improvements to Market Square. So over the last month, I've been in discussion with the Lake Forest Garden Club president, and we've talked to the new owner out at Market Square. We've had a lot of discussions. We've been consulting with landscape companies, and we decided to pull out the boxwoods, and we would like to replace those. The motion tonight, well, before I get to that, the endowment covers plant material replacement. That's mainly the boxwoods that I mentioned, but also hardware or hardscape maintenance and repair. That would be brick repair. We're not doing all the bricks, but there are areas where the bricks have been broken and things like that. Irrigation system repairs and fountain maintenance and repairs. So we have gotten estimates on these items, and over the next few months we would like to take care of these. The boxwood and the plant material is particularly sensitive to time though. If we don't replace those now in the next week or so, we're not going to be able to do it until the fall. So we would like to move forward on that. Some of the turf repair is going on right now. We would like to do that right away. Some of the brick repair could be done in the summer. So we are requesting that we be given $25,000, not to exceed $25,000 out of the Market Square Endowment. Right now, the balance, as you can see on your write-up, is $227,000. So if there's any questions on that, I can take those now.
Actually have a
You want to talk about the public notice and contacting the garden club?
Yes, sorry, I should have mentioned that earlier. We have talked to the president of the garden club. We do maintain a registry of people that in the past have been garden club members. I talked with Maggie Coleman. She's the current president. She received a letter last week, and that was informing her of our decision to pull the plants that are out there now and our request for these same items, the $25,000 worth. She sent it out to other garden club members and had the discussion. I have not, the day that I talked to her, she was favorable to all of these requests, and she has not expressed any concern with that. So that's why we're here tonight. It has gone through the process of being reviewed by the people on the registry.
That it actually brings up a whole nother question, and maybe that's one for historical information for everybody. Can you explain why the garden club is approving city expenditures?
They're not really approving the expenditures. We do consult with them, though. They were very involved with the original planting out there. So we do want to honor the original design. So we're not changing anything out there. That's why we're using the boxwood. But we do like to make them aware of this. And if there are any concerns, this is their opportunity tonight. So the public hearing is meant if they do have any concerns. It's not really an approval of spending the funds.
Vic?
And I can put a finer point on this, and so might Alderman Beidler. At the time the Market Square 2000 effort was concluding and they had the additional funds, there was an agreement entered into between the Market Square 2000 entity and the city, whereby the city would take custody of the monies, Market Square 2000 would dissolve, and the city would only use the funds consistent with the agreement. One of the things in the agreement was that there would be a registry of interested parties, and the registry was to include members of a qualified garden club. Hence, the registry here is the garden club. They don't have the approval, as Chuck was saying. Rather, they have the right to review and comment prior to the final approval by the council. There is a resolution before you tonight which would approve the expenditures that are listed in the agenda packet, and subject to any comments in public hearing, that's what the council would be asked to act upon.
And for, again, historical purposes, because this is now 15 years ago or 16 years ago, and there may be a significant number of people in town that weren't around for this. I don't remember what the split was, but not unlike Forest Park Beach, Market Square was renovated with a combination of city and privately generated funds.
Yeah, in fact, and again, Alderman Beidler may have far better understanding of this than I, but the city essentially took care of what are city utilities, if you will. All of the other elements of it were financed through contributions of members of the community through the Market Square 2000.
I might just embellish. It was terrific. That's actually all that needs to be said. But I might say at the end of that project, so it was Market Square 2000. I think we started it in '97. That sounds about right, Bob. And it got to be 2002, and frankly, we were delighted to give the city the funds that had not been spent to be used as an endowment. And you know, they said, well, we'll want to keep in touch with someone, and we were like, okay, fine, you know. But and it's worked out really well. I know I was originally on that list, and incidentally, Chuck, Maggie is great with this. She wrote to past presidents, of which I'm one. Everyone was in complete agreement with this. Of course, as some of us are wont to do, there were suggestions of additional plant materials and so on, which you and I can certainly talk about later. But everyone thinks this is a very appropriate use of money in a terrifically tough year, and it's extremely important that you source those things right away and get them in. This is an important part of town, and the plants look terrible, and as they do everywhere. I mean, it's just been a rough year. I had not seen until the materials that I got tonight the background of the use of that money. You've stewarded it beautifully. You have never, we've never taken this much out, but we've never had a winter like this. So I think everybody's fine with it. So, and I think, frankly, George, the model of how this has worked has been a reasonably good one and could be used in other temporary
Going
projects.
forward with Forest Park when it's all done.
Yeah.
Chuck, I have a quick question. Is there anything we can do to guard against this happening in the future, or is it really not necessary because is it really just due to the extraordinarily rough winter that we had?
Oh, that's a good question. It is the extraordinarily bad winter. I mean, this shouldn't happen often, but there are things that we can do that we've gotten, again, some estimates on. Anti-desiccants sprayed at the right time of the year. I don't want to bore you with the whole details of why those plants died, but basically that's going to keep the moisture in. We can apply that in the fall. A lot of companies, landscape companies, wish they had done that last year, but who knew that it was going to be the worst winter in many years. So there are things that we can spray on those to hold the moisture in.
I don't remember this happening before, certainly not to this degree, so I would guess that it's a fairly hardy plant, but if there's something that we can do and it's not cost prohibitive, maybe the endowment would cover that spray or whatever it is that you're talking about as well.
Yeah, and we can talk about that more, and we do want to look at that, protecting the investment. It is fairly inexpensive compared to the cost of the losses we saw this year.
On the other hand, as Maggie pointed out in her email, 14 years is a pretty good run.
Yes,
Plants.
yes.
So especially in a place where there is going to be, where there's heavy traffic, there's going to be winter treatment with salts and plowing and so on. So, the bright side is that we're very pleased they lasted as long as they did, and that there's some resources there to be helpful to replace them.
Yes.
I had a similar question. Did they use rock salt to keep the brick pavers clear?
They do, and that's something that
Not
I would
recommended.
like to change as well, but that's in the works also. That's kind of a question for the entire area out there with different people, different businesses doing different approaches. We would like to have a unified approach using something that's like Landscaper's Choice or calcium chloride, things that will be far less detrimental to the turf and the plants.
And the bricks.
And the bricks, absolutely.
As long as we're on the topic of dead plants, is there a body count on the median strips out in Route 60?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I'll go with the positive first. The perennials and the shrubs that we planted are doing exceptionally well. I'm very happy to say that's a good news. And there were a lot of those, so that was going to be a big problem. The trees and the smaller trees, like the black haws and the hawthorns, I'm sure you've noticed some of them, we were patiently waiting for them to bud out, and they have not at all. So we lost a few of the swamp white oaks and some of the hawthorns and the black haws. So we are looking for plant material. We're not going to jump in and just do the same thing, obviously. We want to look at what caused that. So we want to pull some out, make sure that there's no issues underground. I don't want to say that it was the harsh winter. That could have played a role on some of them. I don't know for sure. But we are looking at possibly some smaller plant material. I think that survivability would be much better with smaller stock. We will be looking at this very soon, though. We would like to get some of that replaced. They didn't all die off, but quite a few of the hawthorns did. They are a sensitive plant. Sometimes they were recommended as something that would do well. We may have found out that we don't want to take that chance again, though.
Are these covered by guarantees? They're less than a year old.
They are not.
Okay.
Well, Bob said we just have to tell them it's June. They think it's February.
We were waiting for that patient. We thought up until just a couple. There are actually some people that have told us give it a little more time. I'm not that optimistic. I wish I could tell you give it 2 more weeks, but I don't want you to think that they're probably going to make it. A lot of them are dead. So.
Any other questions of Chuck? Anyone from the public wishing to comment? Seeing none, I'll close the public meeting, and I ask for a motion to approve expenditures against the Market Square 2000 Endowment Fund in the amount of $25,000. Do I have a motion to approve?
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please, Biddy.
Alderman Waldeck.
Aye.
Alderman Beidler.
Aye.
Alderman Moore.
Aye.
Alderman Pandeleon.
Aye.
Alderman Tack.
Aye.
Alderman Reisenberg.
Aye.
Alderman Edelman. Aye. Alderman Moreno.
Aye.
8 yeas, 0 nay, motion carries.
Thank you, Betty, very much. Next item on the agenda, additional items for council discussion. Anything else? Bob, anything from you? Any of the council members?
Next one, next meeting.
If not, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Have a
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
This is normal.